When did you witness someone fail as a parent? My ex-wife has our daughter Haley every weekend, and every time she comes back, she's got a new injury. Bruised lip, scraped knee, even a cracked rib once. But the court's only response has been, children need their mothers. Well, last week I was getting ready to go pick her up when I got the call. It was her friend's mom. Haley's at my house in Woodbridge for a sleepover, and her insulin pump just failed. We don't know what to do. Her blood sugar is at 450 and climbing. I felt my stomach drop through the floor. That number should never be above 180. Where's her backup insulin? I asked, already grabbing my keys. She doesn't have any with her. Your wife dropped her off and said everything was in the pump. My hands were shaking as I started my car. My ex always carried the backup insulin in her purse. She made a huge show of it during custody hearings, proving what a prepared mother she was. I called her immediately. She answered with casino noise in the background. Haley's pump failed. She needs insulin now. You're only 15 minutes from the sleepover house. Yes, yes, yes. I just hit an all-time record, she responded. Our daughter is dying, I yelled. You need to leave now. There was a pause. I could hear dealer voices in the background. I'm at the high roller table. I don't care what table. I'm down $3,000. I need to win it back. I slammed my hand on the steering wheel, pushing 90 on the highway. Our daughter is going to die. I'm 45 minutes away. You're 15. Then call an ambulance. They don't carry insulin. You know this. Only her prescription pen works. It's in your purse. I'm in the middle of a hand. Give me 20 minutes. The sleepover mom texted me a photo at 12:15. Haley unconscious on their bathroom floor, her lips pale, vomit on her shirt. The text said she's over 500 now, barely responsive. I called my ex again, screaming now. She's dying. Dying. Get in your car. Stop being dramatic. And stop calling. You made me lose that hand. The dealer thought I was cheating with signals. That's another 500 gone because of you. I hung up and called 911, explaining everything through tears. They said they'd meet me there, but confirmed what I already knew. Paramedics can't administer insulin without the prescription pen. When I finally screeched into their driveway at 12:38 a.m., the ambulance was already there. Haley was on a stretcher, completely unconscious. The paramedic looked grim. Blood sugar's too high for our meter to read. We need insulin immediately. My ex has it. She's coming. But she wasn't. Not for another 42 minutes. I tried calling the casino directly. My daughter is dying. My ex-wife, Rachel Beckett, is at your high roller table. She has life-saving medication. Please make her leave. Sir, we can't force guests to leave for personal matters. It's not personal. A child is dying. I'm sorry, sir. The paramedics arrived. I begged them to call her, thinking medical professionals would get through. The lead paramedic tried. Ma'am, your daughter is in diabetic ketoacidosis. Her organs are shutting down. I heard her response through his phone. I'm her mother. I'll decide when it's serious enough to leave. When my ex finally strolled through the emergency room doors at 1:20 a.m., her designer purse was over her shoulder, reeking of cigarette smoke and wine. Haley was already in the pediatric ICU. She tossed the insulin pen at the nurse like it was nothing. Here, though, you should know your constant calling made me lose $6,000 tonight. I couldn't speak. Our daughter was on dialysis. The doctor had just explained her kidneys were functioning at 40%. My ex turned to the doctor, not even looking at Haley behind the glass. This is because her pump was defective, right? Manufacturing error, ma'am. This is because she didn't receive insulin for over 2 hours during a life-threatening situation. My ex's face went red. She spun toward me. You should have made sure the sleepover mom had backup supplies. What kind of father sends his diabetic child without backup? The backup was in your purse at the casino. Don't you dare blame this on me. You're the one who lives 45 minutes away. You chose to move that far. If you lived closer, this wouldn't have happened. The doctor interrupted to explain Haley would need dialysis 3 times a week, possibly for months, maybe permanently. We had no idea if she was ever going to be the same again. My ex pulled out her phone and started typing. I need to document this negligence. 2 days later, I was with Haley in the ICU, and my wife was in the casino when I got the news. Haley's organs failed. She didn't make it. I cried so hard I ran out of tears. And over the next 36 hours, I called Rachel over 50 times, but she didn't even visit once. I remember that's when I stopped crying. Not because I wasn't devastated. I was. And not because my life wasn't destroyed. It absolutely was, but because I knew I had to destroy Rachel. And I was about to show her exactly how far a grieving father is willing to go. I sat in my car in the hospital parking lot for 3 hours after they wheeled Haley's body away. My phone was in my lap, and I was making lists in the Notes app every person I needed to call. Every piece of evidence I needed to save. The crying had stopped completely, and my hands weren't shaking anymore. Something cold and focused had replaced all that pain. I wrote down the sleepover mom's number first, then the paramedics who responded, the casino's main number, the emergency room doctor's name from his badge. I took screenshots of every call log from that night. 52 calls to Rachel while our daughter was dying. Each one timestamped, each one ignored. The parking lot emptied and filled again with the morning shift, but I kept working, making folders in my phone for evidence, writing down everything I could remember about what Rachel said. The next morning, 2 cops showed up at my house. They'd gotten my address from the hospital. The older one had a notebook out and asked me to walk through everything that happened. I showed them my phone with all the call logs, gave them the sleepover mom's number, explained how Rachel stayed at the casino for over an hour after being told Haley was dying. They wrote everything down and said they'd need to talk to the other witnesses. After they left, I started calling family members. My sister answered on the 3rd ring, and I told her Haley was gone. She cried for 10 minutes straight. But when I mentioned going after Rachel legally, she got quiet. Said she didn't want to get involved in our problems. My brother was the same. So was my mom. Everyone said they were sorry, but nobody wanted to pick sides. Rachel's family wouldn't even answer my calls. I sat at my kitchen table, realizing I was completely alone in this. The sleepover mom texted me that afternoon asking if we could meet. I drove to a coffee shop near her house, and she was already there waiting. Her eyes were red and puffy. She pushed her phone across the table to me. Every photo from that night was there. Haley on the bathroom floor at different times. The timestamps showed exactly how fast she got worse. There were texts between her and her husband about whether to call 911. Screenshots of her trying to reach Rachel. She told me she'd already talked to the police that morning. Said she'd testify to anything I needed. We both cried in that coffee shop and people stared, but I didn't care. I spent the next 2 days at my computer putting together a document. Every call log got its own page with the timestamp highlighted. I transcribed the voicemails I'd left Rachel begging her to leave the casino. Found the texts from the sleepover mom with the photos attached. Downloaded my location data showing my drive from home to the hospital. Rachel's location data from her social media showing her at the casino the whole time. 52 calls she ignored became 52 pages of evidence. I made 10 copies of everything. 1 for the police, 1 for CPS, 1 for a lawyer, 7 more just in case. On the 3rd day, I got in my car and drove to Rachel's apartment. I sat outside for 20 minutes with the engine running. Her car was in the driveway. The living room light was on. I could see her moving around inside. My hands gripped the steering wheel so hard my knuckles went white. I wanted to go in there and make her hurt the way Haley hurt, but getting arrested wouldn't help anything. I drove home and went straight to my garage. Put 3 holes in the drywall with my fist. My knuckles bled, but it felt better than doing nothing. Detective Cade Norris called me the next day. He'd been assigned to investigate whether criminal charges were possible. We met at the police station, and I gave him my evidence binder. He flipped through it slowly, and his face got more serious with each page, but then he leaned back and explained the problem. Rachel wasn't physically there when Haley got sick. She didn't actively hurt her. Proving criminal negligence when a parent was absent is really hard. He said they'd investigate, but told me not to expect fast results or maybe any results at all. I filed a report with CPS that same week. The investigator who showed up was Regina Norris. Turns out she was Cade's sister. She took my evidence binder and said she'd evaluate Rachel's fitness as a parent. I explained that Haley was already gone, so there wasn't a child to protect anymore. Regina said it didn't matter. The report would create an official record that could support other legal actions. She seemed to actually care about what happened. Rachel and I had to meet at the funeral home to make arrangements. She showed up 45 minutes late. The funeral director was already showing me casket options when she walked in. She took one look at the prices and started yelling about wasting money. Said we should just do cremation with no service. I wanted a proper funeral for our daughter. The funeral director had to step between us when Rachel started screaming that I was trying to bankrupt her. She kept saying Haley wouldn't know the difference anyway. I paid for everything myself just to end the fighting. The funeral was 3 days later. Rachel showed up 20 minutes after it started. I could smell the alcohol from 10 feet away. She stumbled up to the podium and tried to give a speech about being a devoted mother. Her words were so slurred that half of them made no sense. My family shifted uncomfortably in their seats while Rachel's family stared at the floor. She rambled for 5 minutes about how much she sacrificed for Haley, how hard it was being a single mother every weekend, how nobody understood her struggles. I sat in the front row with my hands folded, letting everyone see exactly who she was. The woman who chose gambling over saving our daughter's life. After the funeral, I spent 3 days calling every lawyer in the area until I found Gareth Lawson, a wrongful death specialist. His office was in a strip mall next to a dry cleaner. When I walked in carrying my binder of evidence, his wife Antonia was at the reception desk. She took one look at me and brought me straight back to his office without making me wait. Gareth was a big man with gray hair who listened to my entire story without interrupting once. I spread out all my evidence across his desk, call logs showing 52 ignored calls, texts from the sleepover mom with timestamps, photos of Haley unconscious on the bathroom floor. Antonia sat beside him, jotting notes on a yellow legal pad, while Gareth reviewed each document carefully. When he got to the part about Rachel saying she needed to win back her $3,000, his face flushed red. He explained that wrongful death lawsuits work differently from criminal cases. We didn't need to prove Rachel intended to kill Haley, only that her negligence directly caused the death. The burden of proof was lower, but we still needed solid evidence to link her choices to the outcome. He said we had a strong foundation, but more documentation would make the case airtight. That night, I stayed up until 4 in the morning researching the casino's policies. Their website listed responsible gaming guidelines and self-exclusion programs, but nothing about emergencies. Then I found their corporate handbook through a former employee's LinkedIn post. It had detailed protocols for removing drunk patrons, catching card counters, and handling medical emergencies, but nothing about notifying gamblers of family emergencies or any duty to intervene when someone refused to leave. This gap meant the casino had no rule requiring them to help, but also nothing preventing them from doing so. I printed everything and highlighted the key sections. The next morning, I went to the hospital records department and requested all of Haley's medical files. The clerk said it would take 2 weeks, but when I explained what happened, she came back 20 minutes later with a full set. The EMS report was brutal. Haley's blood sugar was over 600 when they arrived, her breathing shallow, her skin cold and clammy. The hospital intake forms showed she was in severe diabetic ketoacidosis, her organs already shutting down. But the worst was the doctor's note. With prompt insulin within 30 minutes of the pump failure, Haley would have had a 95% chance of full recovery. Instead, she went over 2 hours without it. The medical examiner's report confirmed the cause of death as complications from diabetic ketoacidosis due to lack of insulin. I photocopied everything 3 times. Over the next week, I wrote out every single detail from that night for Gareth. 20 pages of pure facts, no emotions. Exact timelines, exact quotes. What Rachel said on the phone, what the casino employee told me, what the paramedic explained about not being able to give insulin. Seeing it all laid out made the line painfully clear. Rachel's choice to stay at the casino led directly to Haley dying in that hospital bed. Each decision point where she could have left, but didn't. Each minute that slipped away while our daughter's body poisoned itself. Gareth read my statement 3 times, scribbling notes in the margins, then had me sign and date every page. That same afternoon, he drafted preservation letters and sent them by certified mail to both the casino's legal department and Rachel's apartment. The letters demanded all surveillance footage, transaction records, player rewards data, and phone records from that night. He explained that destroying evidence after receiving such a letter would be spoliation, with serious consequences. The casino's lawyers replied within 48 hours, saying they'd comply only with a court order. Rachel never replied at all. We filed the wrongful death lawsuit the following Monday. Gareth's process server delivered the papers to Rachel's apartment. She opened the door after 10 minutes of knocking, threw the papers back at him, and slammed the door. He picked them up and left them at her door. It still counted as proper service. Gareth warned me this was only the beginning of a long, expensive fight. But at least we were finally doing something instead of drowning in grief. 2 days later, Regina Norris from CPS called to schedule a follow-up meeting with me. She had already visited Rachel's home. She couldn't share details due to confidentiality, but said there were concerning findings about Rachel's living situation. Her tone was disgusted as she mentioned finding gambling receipts and empty wine bottles, but no food in the fridge. The next week, I was served papers at work, in front of my coworkers. Rachel had filed for a restraining order, accusing me of harassment and threatening calls. Lies. I hadn't contacted her once since the funeral. But I still had to pay Gareth to defend against it. That weekend, I sold my motorcycle to cover the legal costs. I dug deeper into the casino's corporate structure and found their compliance officer, a woman named Nora Kemp. I called her office directly and left a message. She returned the call the next day, defensive from the start, insisting the casino had no legal obligation to intervene in personal matters. But when I pressed about whether they had reviewed their policies after a child's death connected to one of their customers, she admitted they were conducting an internal review. She agreed to a formal meeting the following week. I contacted the insulin pump manufacturer and requested Haley's device data. Their report showed 17 urgent alarms starting at 11:45 p.m., each requiring Rachel's response with backup insulin. The final alerts warned of life-threatening levels, proof she ignored repeated warnings. Gareth quickly drafted subpoenas for the casino's surveillance and Rachel's player data. Their lawyers tried to block it, but after weeks of filings, the judge ordered them to comply. Meanwhile, Antonia and I visited the sleepover mom for a sworn affidavit. She tearfully described Rachel refusing to leave, Haley's rapid decline, and holding my daughter as she vomited before passing out. That same week, Rachel began posting on Facebook, twisting the story to make herself the victim and blaming me, the sleepover family, and even the pump company. I screenshotted every post as evidence. When I met with DA Damon Hunt, he admitted criminal negligence cases were hard to prove but promised a full investigation. I left disappointed but hopeful. I end therapy with Henrietta Carlson. I confessed my violent thoughts about Rachel. She helped me set boundaries, pursue justice only through legal channels. To cover mounting legal bills, I sold my motorcycle, tools, furniture, and finally my father's watch, each sacrifice fueling the fight for Haley. With Henrietta's guidance, I wrote a victim impact statement focused not on anger but on truth, accountability, and preventing future tragedies. Finally, Gareth prepared me for a meeting with the casino. Their management insisted they had no obligation to intervene in family emergencies, but we documented how their refusal contributed to Haley's death. The casino repeated that security couldn't remove a customer who wasn't breaking rules, that forcing someone out could mean lawsuits, and that they couldn't verify emergency calls. Their lack of humanity only fueled my determination. I filed a detailed complaint with the Gaming Commission, including transcripts from my calls. Investigator Julio De Leon took it seriously and opened a formal review into whether casinos should be required to act in medical emergencies involving minors. 2 weeks later, I received a CPS letter from Regina Norris confirming medical neglect against Rachel. It stated her refusal to leave the casino with life-saving insulin constituted child neglect under state law. It wasn't criminal charges, but it was the first official recognition that her actions killed our daughter. Soon after, Gareth received Rachel's phone records. They showed she arrived at the casino at 8:47 p.m., ignored all 52 of my calls, and didn't leave until after 1 a.m., when Haley was already dying. We built a clear timeline proving she declined calls while placing bets, but days later, Rachel countersued me for $200,000, claiming emotional distress and harassment. Her lawyer painted me as a vengeful ex using Haley's death to ruin her life. At the hearing, Gareth presented the CPS findings, phone records, and timeline, proving my actions were legitimate responses to neglect. The judge dismissed most of her claims, but ordered that all communication go only through attorneys. In therapy, I admitted I'd been having violent dreams about Rachel. Henrietta explained it was a grief response and helped me channel that rage into legal actions instead of destructive thoughts. In therapy, Henrietta helped me turn violent urges into legal strategies. Property destruction became liens. Rage became pushing for a guilty verdict. I spent days turning my dining room into a war room, organizing every document, photo, and record into timelines and folders. Antonia was stunned by the detail, saying she'd never seen a client prepare like this. Soon after, Julio called to say the Gaming Commission had scheduled a hearing on casino emergency policies, and they wanted me to testify. While gathering evidence, I discovered Rachel was 3 months behind on rent and facing eviction, information Gareth said could help secure any civil judgment. The weight of it hit me, but then I remembered Haley dying while Rachel chose blackjack.